All right. So you've had a bit of a journey to get here as well?
Yeah. Just this morning it was a 10-minute cab ride. But no, otherwise a few days back I flew over from Mumbai, India.
Awesome. Thank you very much for joining us.
So, no, absolutely, it was great. I've never been to an event in a cinema before.
No, I mean it's pretty good, isn't it?
I'm not going to forget this.
Yes, it's great. See, they love it. But look, I think what I wanted to do is, obviously, the reason I love e-com is because people kind of, I think, fall into it a lot of the time. There's not many people who are sort of like through and through from e-com. So how did you, with obviously, your career today, get into e-commerce specifically?
I mean, it's a bit cliched, but I think for us it was very accidental. We were focused on building this technology around AI, and we'll obviously talk about it in a minute. And then we realized that the greatest application of that technology was within e-com. And then e-com was growing so fast over the last like 5 or 7 years that it just kind of came together. So, did I wake up one morning and say that, hey, look, e-com is my life? Probably not, right? I don't think that's the way it happened. I think it was more organic, where the tech and the customer demand just sort of came together, and we found ourselves doing e-commerce.
Do you like that about the industry, in the sense that it's kind of like people don't just kind of start out from day dot and go, look, I'm going to be in e-commerce. You have people kind of coming from lots of different industries. Does that bring a lot to your company as well?
Yeah, and I think actually a lot of partners or brands that I meet that are in e-com have a similar story, right? Like I think e-com is no longer like e-com, it's like basically everything, right? I mean, you pretty much transact like digitally for most things. So sometimes the lines between what is pure e-commerce, like the stores and the brands and the Shopify stuff, and what might be just like other transactions is a little blurred. So no, I like that,
Cool. I mean, obviously a few of us already know about Haptik quite well. Others probably know a little bit. Give us a bit of a rundown, I guess, sort of that sort of minute breakdown of what exactly it is you guys do at Haptik.
Right, so this is the plug.
This is the sales pitch.
This is what I took the flight here for.
Yeah,
all right, cool. All right, so Haptik is a conversational AI company. I mean, the most basic way of saying this is we do chatbots, but it's also not the cool way of saying it. So the nicer way of saying it is that we build AI. Essentially, one of the things that we've done and why I started the company now long back was we felt that chat or messaging could be a great interface to actually do transactions. So typically, conversational AI or chatbots have usually been referred to as customer support and like automate stuff. That's good, and obviously we do that. But where we are trying to focus a lot more is, can you facilitate actual buying and commerce on a chat, bot, or messaging? We particularly get very excited about what we call these third-party messaging channels. So, for example, in this country, it's slightly lesser, but in other parts of the world, we see WhatsApp as like a really big channel where customers can go and, talk to a business and transact. In the US or States, for example, we're seeing SMS as another such channel, and so on and so forth. So really our core business is, how do we take conversational AI, implement it for brands, e-commerce, and then we also do work in financial services to facilitate some sort of transaction or commerce. Like I said, because AI or chatbots have been doing well for customer support, we also do that. But really where we're trying to go with this is that, could you actually facilitate commerce and transactions?
Because you also, you help the train line, don't you, as well? You do their chatbot solution too.
Yeah. So Trainline is one of our flagship customers in this part of the world. So with them, it's a very simple chatbot use case, customer support use case. So you go to Trainline and you ask for a refund or something went wrong with the ticket, and the chatbot will help you out and see how can they resolve that issue.
Awesome. You mentioned obviously the different markets there, and I think that's an interesting thing to look at, because obviously, like you said there, and we kind of had a similar discussion in the last eCom Collab Club about the fact that we were talking about live video shopping, and how look, it's being kind of purported as like the new thing, but a lot of people are saying, look, that worked very well in the East because there's a lot of use on mobile, versus in the West, it's a little bit more different situation. From your guys' point of view, in terms of the different countries or different geographies that you operated in, what would you say are kind of the biggest differences in terms of, I guess, sort of how difficult it is to kind of penetrate each of those geographies?
Yeah, that's a pretty loaded question. So we operate in 10 countries now. The States, North America being like our core market, and then we have operations here, Southeast Asia, Middle East, Africa. I think one of the big learnings for us has been I have started looking at the world in sort of broadly like 3 segments. One, or like not in any order of priority, but like one segment is what I look at is basically North America and then Western Europe, which I think tends to operate very similar to each other. I think here brands are very conscious about ROI, value. There's no rush to buy because it's more about will this incrementally add value or not.
Sure.
So I think these markets tend to operate similar. They're harder to get in, but I think once you are in with a few customers, then I think you're in, right? Then it becomes hard to replace because there was so much decision making and so much that went behind, firstly trying to bring you in. Segment 2 is what I like to call broadly like fast growing emerging markets, which for us is Southeast Asia, South Asia, Middle East, and then Latin America. These markets are actually just extremely fast growing in terms of just adoption of consumers, e-com growth rates. Like, if you meet a business in these markets, like a brand, everybody's growing. And everybody's growing like 20-30% month on month, right? Even a small brand or a big brand. So I think there the appetite to buy technology is a lot and buy it a lot faster. So I think that's a good thing. The downside of that is that, of course, the market sizes are lower. The average price points of selling your software are going to be significantly lower because, it's just nature of the market. And then finally, segment 3 is like basically East Asia and then Australia, which, trying to be politically correct, nobody really cares about. So.
And do you think in terms of kind of like your sales and marketing approach, have you had to do lots? I mean, obviously the messaging I know is probably going to have to change a bit, but in terms of your tactics for sales and marketing, have they had to be very different in those sort of 2 segments?
Yes, 100%. Great question. So segment 1, which is like I said, North America, Western Europe, and then kind of emerging markets, the sales and marketing are entirely different. I think in these markets over here, obviously it's a lot more partner focused. I think it's a lot more like relationship selling, a lot more kind of getting to know buyers, getting to know partners, getting a brand out there. Like, a brand is a very important part of who you are. I think in emerging markets it's very different in terms of it's mostly direct selling. It's a lot driven by just pure like website lead gen. Customers come, fill out the form, and then you kind of get it going. It's a bit more of a volume game over there because you need like lots of logos to like justify kind of the price of the product. Absolutely, I think the tactics vary a lot, the strategy varies a lot, and that's been one of the big learnings for us at the company as we've been doing this everywhere.
Awesome, thank you very much. Okay, so the other kind of question is, like, I don't want to be an asshole here.
You can do it.
Okay, but I think there's been a heck of a lot of noise about AI the past couple of years, right?
Oh my God, yeah.
Okay, so it's becoming to the point where it feels like a little bit of a buzzword. Do you think the space is too crowded, or do you think that something else is going on?
No, space is too crowded. So, I always like to say the story, right? So I started this company in 2013, and when I went for my Series A fundraise, basically the constant pushback I got was that, hey, nobody's doing this. Like, why will this work? There's nobody like, you're the first person, and we don't like to invest in companies that are first, right? I mean, investors obviously feel nervous about most things. That was my Series A pitch, right? 3 years later, when I went for my Series B, the question was, hey, now there's 100 other companies doing this. How are you going to like compete? Whatever, we got past that. And then when we raised our last round 3 years back, everybody is doing it. The technology is available everywhere. How do you even exist? And again, we have to get past that. So it's been a very interesting journey because, so Gartner, they mentioned to us 2 months back that in our space, they have evaluated or seen 1,700 companies, 1,700 companies who claim to do some version of AI or chatbot, which is absolutely crazy. My take has been simple on all of this. Firstly, I think it's a good thing. Like there's more of this technology out there in the world. You hate to be alone. I think it's a good thing that there's broadly other companies doing it. When you talk to customers, it's not as if I'm trying to like tell them something new. They've seen it, they're familiar with it, they've spoken to somebody else. The way I think we think is going to shape out, the technology or the nature of AI in itself, I think we're going to see a big, two things happen. One, most vendors or most software companies will start being very verticalized to specific industries, right? So like you will have like what we are trying to do, right? We're e-com and then a little bit of financial services, very focused on a certain vertical, trying to build out the end-to-end use case, the solution, the tech, and that requires a very different DNA. And then of course, the second thing that's going to happen is a lot of consolidation, right? So we're going to see a lot of M&A over the next year or so, particularly in the current markets. I think it presents even better for M&A because there's a lot of companies who are not going to be able to last beyond a certain point. So short answer, super crowded, sometimes, and being very honest over here, it's difficult to tell how somebody is different from the other person. And even though my marketing and sales team, we tend to do a great job of highlighting a differentiators. I mean, are they really differentiators? I think about it sometimes, right? Because all of us look a lot like each other, and honestly, if you get us in a room to do a sales pitch, we will all claim the same things, right? So I think our strategy long term is verticalization. We have to be very good at 3 or 4 industry verticals, go very deep, integrate with various partners, various products, and that's the only way that I think we're going to win.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I've definitely seen that. I think in the market is that when this kind of happens, where you kind of get this clustering around a particular element of technology, it's then initially when that happens, you market based on that. So going back kind of 2-3 years ago, people were marketing on the basis of AI, whereas now, like you said, people are getting a particular vertical, or they're basing it on service or integrations, and it's like, but I understand what you're saying in the sense is that now there is kind of that better understanding of AI. At least now merchants have got a better grasp of the kind of things that can be done. Whereas I think probably, maybe 2-3 years back, you were having to constantly explain what this AI thing was that no one really had a concept of. So I understand what you're saying, like that's a good thing.
Yeah, but like back to the competition part, and again, I'm very honest about these things. Like literally, like if you take like the top 10, 15 companies in our space, and let's say you pull a merchant or you pull a brand, whatever, and say that, hey, look, I want this technology, and you have the 10 or 15 of us pitch to them, by the end of it, we'd all sound similar, right? And that's part of the problem of what, my challenge is, that how do we think about in the next 3 to 5 years be very different? And like I said, I keep going back to the same thing, that for us, being very vertical focused, very industry focused is going to be the key.
Awesome, thank you. Okay, cool. I mean, I want to talk about another buzzword in a way. Look, Omnichannel, again, has been talked about a lot recently, and obviously what's happened in the world the past couple of years, and I think also particularly in the UK, it's definitely been something that's happening with what's happening with obviously our economy, what's happening with kind of the general high street, and what the situation is there. But from kind of tech partners' perspective, obviously a lot of us in the room who work for kind of tech companies involved here, are partners doing enough on Omnichannel at the moment, in your opinion?
The next e-com event you should do, play a drinking game on any time somebody says Omnichannel.
I love
it. Because you're right. I don't like that word. I'll be honest with you. I think it's overused and it's a bit. I mean, what does it even mean, right? Sometimes I think about it like, why do we even talk about omnichannel? Because if I'm a brand or a merchant, large, small, medium, like, you have to have different touch points to sell, right? So, the way I think about this is, okay, look, here's the way I think about it, right? So, back when we only had websites in our lives, life was easy, right? That you don't need to like figure out mobile apps and all the stuff we're doing. Once apps came around, everybody is like, hey, should I make an app? How should I think about this? What should I do? But even if you look at it today, right, not every merchant or brand has both a website and an app. It depends on just like the brand and what they want to do. So the way I think about, I'll answer the second part of your question in a minute, the way I think about omnichannel is basically think about for your product and your, whatever you're selling, what's the best way to touch the customer? It could be high street, it could be retail, it could be Amazon, it could be direct to consumer. Like, just think about that in a very like, almost like ground up first principles manner. Like, okay, look, where are my customers going to come? And I think just build for that. And then, software will follow. To answer your part about partners and tech integrations for omnichannel, yeah, I mean, look, I don't think that's a differentiator anymore. I think like everybody has to do it, including companies like us. We have to be plugged in to support like touch points of, offline, online and all these pieces. I think it's par for the course. It's like saying, again, same thing, right? That do you have like analytics or do you have like, website? Like everybody has to do it and I think everybody is doing a lot more.
Great answer, thank you. I wanted to talk, I guess, we've talked a little bit on kind of the tech partner front. From obviously the agency point of view, and there's quite a few agencies here as well today, is that when obviously it comes to agencies, what we talk about here is, look, agencies want to see how much money they can make out of tech partners. Like, I'm sorry, but that's the situation. But
everybody does. Yeah.
From your point of view, what's Haptik going to allow agencies to do for their clients? How can they essentially bring that into their service offering by using Haptik?
So, I'll mention Haptik in this context. I've been thinking about this for a long time, that whenever we work with agencies and whichever agencies we work with, we realize that even agencies need to move to the next level of not purely being transactional, but actually being solution oriented and consultative, right? So our solution and what we provide allows them to do that. So the good and the bad thing about the Haptik product is it's not an easy solution. It requires like educating the customer. Hey, look, here's what you can do. Here's how the AI will work. Here's how maybe agents can feed in and so on. So the bad thing about that is it takes longer. But the good thing is that once you implement it, you're not there for a long time, right?
But also, that's also saleable hours for an agency as well, because if you're doing a setup,
exactly,
then, as an agency, we can then sell to the client that setup process anyway. So I see what you're saying, like it is a bit longer, but at the same time, it gives us an opportunity to sell a package which includes that setup piece.
Right, and I'll tell you why, like what I mean, Merriment, is that, like you said, right, that agencies have historically always been focused on how do I make money in the fastest possible time, versus I think as the world changes and then the way we're going, I think merchants and brands are going to be looking to agencies to provide them holistic solutions, which can take longer, but the longer term ROI is significantly higher, because then you're with them for a long time, you kind of see this through for like multi-year contracts and so on. So the average contract length that we sign as a company is about 3 years.
Nice.
And it's all recurring revenue. So that's just an example of what gives you the long-term potential. So what I always tell our agency partners, and I encourage everybody in this room to think about, is that think about how you can play sort of a little bit of this solution game that takes longer initially, but once you're in with the customer, then it's just great money for many years to come. And then the customer starts looking at you a bit more like consultative, right? Like they just pick up the phone and be like, hey, like, look, I want to buy ads somewhere, right? It's more about like, okay, look, what's my chatbot doing? How can we do better? How can we do less? And those conversations are a very different context. One of the other things we've learned about just our product is, it's super interesting. And that's something I've learned over the years just while building the company, is that typically in most solutions or most products, you mostly have marketing people in a merchant or a brand talking to you. Because of the nature of ours, where it touches the end customer, we typically have like 3 or 4 stakeholders. So it's the marketing, it's anybody who heads up the product or e-commerce on the website, it's customer support, and very often we get either the COO or from the founder team, right? So that also gives a lot of visibility within the organization. So for us to cross-sell, upsell becomes easier, and then for the agency, because they have probably more products to even offer than us, that even builds more relationships with us.
Cool. And I suppose the other side of the coin then is, from your guys' point of view, I know, and I've been obviously talking a lot with Harsh as well about your kind of partnerships with agencies. From a tech partner point of view, what are you kind of looking for with partnerships now in terms of then expanding out your integrations, or what's kind of the goal with some of the tech partners are listening and saying, well, hey, look, Haptik might be a company for us to partner with. What are you looking for? What do you want?
Yeah. So we have a fairly large tech alliances unit, and we work with I think about 50 tech partners globally. We categorize them broadly sort of in 3 buckets. First is who we like to call as CRM. So anybody that helps with customer contact, help desk management, customer management, and so on. So Zendesk would be an example in that. Shopify also falls in that category for us. Magento, BigCommerce, and so on and so forth. Freshworks, Freshchat, all that. So anybody who kind of fulfills the last leg of just the transaction. That's one category. Second is who we call tech partners who are more on the conversion side. So people who help with actually making the conversion happen. So conversion optimization tools and so on. And then the third is payment partners, right? So anybody who can facilitate again the transaction through payment gateway. So honestly, to answer your question, what we're looking for is, back to my earlier point, we are very, very, in a market which is super competitive and there's 1,700 people, you have to only win by being very focused. So for us, the focus is we're very good at this whole AI capability and enabling sort of the virtual assistant, and we want to be very focused on e-commerce. Everything else within e-commerce we have to and want to integrate. So we'll less likely we'll build out any of these capabilities because there's so many tools around, right? So pretty much anything that impacts the customer journey right from the start till support, we like to integrate.
Awesome. Lots of opportunity then.
Yeah. A lot of times the idea or the thought is what not to do, right? And back to the focus point, and I think it gets, and that's the, to add the other point, that's the one part that becomes complex, kind of multi-country, multi-geography. I think even the tech partners, sure, you have your 20-30 which are global, but otherwise they tend to vary quite a bit by market, and then all the different teams are asking for all these different tech integrations, and there's only so many engineers in the world, so we have to figure out how to plug that all in.
Difficult.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, look, Aakrit, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you. Thank you so much. Guys, round of applause, please, for Aakrit Vaish from Haptik. Thanks a lot. So guys, I would like to bring the mics over for some Q&A as well. I will jump up with a mic. If anyone's got a question for Aakrit, that'd be great. And I'll run the mic over.
So, confessions of another AI conversational tech person.
It doesn't work? No, okay, go on.
It's really hard. What do you think about voice? Because I'm hearing a lot about, particularly Gen Z, and how they interact with technology is much more bitty, they're running from one place to another place, they quickly do something with a voice memo, they quickly log something with a smart speaker or on your TV. I personally am quite excited about the possibilities, but I don't know if you think that's near term or long term.
Yeah. I think you would have sensed by now that I tend to have fairly polarizing views on most things, and voice is another one of those topics. I think I often think about technology that is it going to be the iPhone or the iPad? Where, you know, the iPhone revolutionized the way we do things, and the iPad was just a really cool gadget that some of us used. I think of voice as the latter. I think that it's going to be something that some of us are going to find it very cool to use. So we started building voice products 7 years back for the first time. And every single time, you know, I had a very similar thought, oh my God, voice is going to be the next thing, everybody's using voice. I got like every single smart speaker in my house, and, you know, all I kept telling them for 5 years was to turn on my lights, right? Because I didn't really use it for anything else. We also have a voice product today. You know, it's cool, it's great, and when we use it and I show a demo and when we talk about it, it'll feel great, but we've just not seen the adoption. I think for us, when it comes to interacting with businesses or transacting with merchants, I think it's a slightly more transactional relationship where people prefer messaging and chat. I think voice design is very different, which, you know, still requires like some more bit of research and work over the next few years. Yeah, I'm just not sure. I mean, theoretically, like, again, I mean, if you start putting like the check boxes, you'll be like, oh wait, this has to happen because market's there, but the adoption's just not there. I feel like one of the biggest problems is just DNA wise, I think people are awkward sometimes, like always speaking, you know, to a speaker or a virtual assistant on voice. I think text or chat is a little bit easier because you can do it like async, you know, it's not socially awkward and so on. So yeah, I mean, technology is there, but adoption I think is limited so far.